So the first place that water is taken from to try and maintain full blood volume in the veins and arteries is the lining of the stomach. We have a thick mucosal wall lining the stomach, and so now we've got a very thin mucosal wall. Now in that mucosal wall there's sodium bicarbonate, and the sodium bicarbonate is in the mucosal wall to neutralise any stomach acid that might try and get through, and basically protect against stomach ulcers. So what is a stomach ulcer? It's basically a breakdown of the tissues. Now let me give you a scenario here. It was probably about maybe 20 years ago, a couple of Australian doctors in Western Australia discovered that Helicobacter pylori caused stomach ulcers. You've heard of that theory? They even put Helicobacter pylori bacteria into some people's stomach and got stomach ulcers. So we had a man do our program from South Africa, and he and his wife came. He was not interested in being at our retreat, but his wife had paid the full amount, so he came, reluctantly. And when I'm talking to him, he's about 57, he did not want to answer my question. He answered them abruptly and shortly. He wasn't annoyed at me. I know he was annoyed at his wife that he was even there. I said to him, "Do you drink water?" "Yep, 2 litres a day." So I just moved on from that. I didn't ask any more questions. I said, "Do you want any medication?" He said, "Yes, I'm on a different antibiotic every month to kill the Helicobacter pylori in my stomach, because I have had stomach problems for 25 years. I've been all over the world." So the latest thing he was trying was antibiotics, because they found he had Helicobacter in his stomach. I said, "Oh, how long have you been on this program?" He said, 4 months. So he's had 4 doses of Helicobacter pylori, and guess what? It's still there, and he's still got the stomach pain. I said, "Are you interested in trying an alternative to your medication?" He said, "No, I'm very happy with my medication. Thank you very much." And I always give everyone respect. I respect everyone's choices. Isn't that our God-given right? Absolutely. I just said, "Oh," and I left it there. Now, after the first lecture where I talked about the body's ability to heal itself, so that we have a problem, we should be looking at how the body heals and work with it. He and his wife, and she was on the medication too, they came straight up to me. He said, "That made more sense than anything I've ever heard. I'm willing to do what you suggest." I said to him, "I have no authority over your medication, but I said, if it was me, I would cease it because it hasn't worked so far, and I would try the herbs that I suggest." He said, "I'm willing." So what I did was I gave him a herb called slippery elm, which coats and soothes the lining of the gut. He did our basic program, 2 days on juices, and we encouraged people, of course, to drink water between every juice. At the end of the week, I had a very happy man in front of me. He was eager to tell me something. I said, "Yes." He said, "I've had no stomach for 2 days, first time in 25 years. I said, "That's good news." And he said, "And I've worked out the problem." To me, that was even better news. Because who's the doctor? We are. We are. I said, what was the problem? He said, "I was drinking nothing between meals, and I was drinking almost a whole litre of water with every meal." So I want to show you what was happening in his gut. So what was happening in his gut, he's drinking nothing between meals, which means the lining to his gut is very thin, which means the hydrochloric acid is breaking down the tissues. And remember, the bacteria is an opportunist organism. And so what happened is the body started to, its own microorganisms changed role and came to the cleanup team, remember the garbage collectors, and they started to clean up the dead tissue, and their name was called Helicobacter pylori. See why you have to ask, why are they there? No wonder they find Helicobacter pylori in every case of stomach ulcer. They're there to clean up the mess. Now, as God would have it, when we smell food and we start to chew food, hydrochloric acid, here's hydrochloric acid is released. And hydrochloric acid connects with pepsinogen to release pepsin, which breaks down protein. But hydrochloric acid does something else. It's antifungal, antibacterial. And so it has the ability to wipe out these guys. And just as hydraulic acid is considering going down and wiping these guys out, he has a big glass of water. And what does water do to hydrochloric acid? It just dilutes it. So Helicobacter pylori is chomping away at the dead tissue, and it goes, whew, that was close. Chomp, chomp, chomp. What this man discovered is that he was drinking water at the wrong time. Do you remember I said to you earlier, I said, how much water do you drink a day? And he said 2 litres. And because he was a little bit abrasive with all his answers, I decided not to push it anymore. So now he drank early in the morning. He stopped drinking half an hour before his meal. That half an hour before the meal immediately thickened that mucosa wall. The water he had the day before fed the hydrochloric acid that's made in the liver. So let's have a look at what's happening now. Now being at the health retreat, he's drinking water at the right time between meals. His mucosa wall is getting thick. And then when he eats his meal, hydrochloric acid, which is not being watered down anymore, comes down and wipes out Helicobacter pylori. What a wonderful process. Who healed him? His body healed itself when given the right conditions. When someone comes to me with Helicobacter pylori, one of the first things I do is increase their hydrochloric acid. Because if you increase the hydrochloric acid, remember what one of its roles is? Antibacterial, anti-yeast, antifungal. Now, I'm not criticising the doctors that discovered that Helicobacter pylori causes stomach ulcer. It is there. It does play a role. But why is it there? Can you see that? And unfortunately, on the board that awards Nobel Prizes, there are representatives from the pharmaceutical companies. So we won't go any further there, and I certainly am not saying people that get Nobel Prizes don't deserve it. Absolutely they do, because of their great work. But I'm just presenting you the facts. I'm just giving you the basic anatomy and physiology. So this man who'd had stomach pain for 25 years found relief by just drinking water at the right time, which allowed his body to heal itself. Dr. Batman Geheldhind, we'll call him Dr. B, he found the first place that we lose water is the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. He also found that if you go down the gastrointestinal tract, you come to the pancreas. And the pancreas releases 2 hormones into the blood to help balance blood sugar levels. That's your insulin and your glucagon. But if you're dehydrated, those hormones aren't being made as they should be. So people that are dehydrated, that can be a contributing factor to diabetes. He also discovered that there are hormones released from the pancreas to finalise digestion. So there's pancreatic lipase to finalise starch digestion. Fat digestion. There's pancreatic amylase. That's what finalises starch digestion. There's trypsin and chymotrypsin that finalise protein digestion. Now, they're all made out of water. If you don't have enough water, your digestion will be compromised. At every stage, water is needed for every body function. So no wonder Dr. Beat entitled his book, when a person has a symptom of disease, he says, must be one of the body's many cries for water. That's the title of his book. Our brain cells shrink when they don't have enough water. Headaches are common when we don't have enough water. Negative thought patterns can develop when our brain cells don't have enough water. I can get my hand to go in and out like that without pain, because around every joint there's fluid. And that fluid is synovial fluid, and it is 99% water. In a state of dehydration, the body can take some water from there to maintain full blood volume in the major arteries and veins. And so if I have pain in there, maybe it's called arthritis, but actually maybe it's just a state of dehydration. Our eyeball moves around in water, so we need water at every single step. Also, our lungs. Now, at the bottom of our lungs, I'll draw you a small picture of our lungs so that you'll understand this. So here's our lungs here. That's one lung. So your trachea splits and comes down, and then it splits again into little bronchioles. It's quite a process. And then at the end of every bronchiole, looks like a little bunch of grapes, but they're alveoli. So at the end of the bronchioles, you've got the alveoli, and this is where the gaseous exchange takes place. Over every alveoli, there's a little blood capillary network, and it is in that blood capillary network where the oxygen is picked up from the alveoli, and the blood drops the carbon dioxide and we breathe out. In every alveoli, there's a minuscule droplet of water. And because of the surface tension of water, when you breathe out, that little alveoli collapses, which allows all the carbon dioxide, the majority of it, to be breathed out, so that now when you breathe in, you can breathe in more oxygen. In a state of dehydration, that little droplet of water is not as it should be, which means that doesn't totally collapse when you breathe out, which means you can't get your full quota of oxygen. But what also happens, the body, to prevent the water loss, it can start constricting the little bronchioles so that we don't lose water. And so one of the signs of dehydration can be constricted breathing. The blood gets very thick in dehydration. Our blood needs to be nice and thin so the heart can pump it easily, so that the little filtering units in our kidneys can filter it with ease. So water is needed for every single body function.